The white base team and Earth Federation together forms the first ever full power Gundam RX-78 deck. The colors predominantly focus on blue just for aggressive attacks with a sprinkle of green with the Zaku units, and the idea is to rush the opponents down as quickly as possible by playing extremely low level and low cost units. The goal is to swarm the board with a ton of bodies and begin attacking the opponent's base and shields in order to get swift victories. This deck is incredibly easy to learn how to play, and I highly recommend you guys, especially who are new players, to give it a try. So let's begin talking about the build, starting with level 2s, which I'm running 4 copies of Zaku 2 from GD01. A simple 1 cost unit that you want to drop as soon as possible once you hit level 2 with 2/2 stats as well. Next, there is also the other Zaku 2 card from the starter deck, which I'm running 4 copies of. Also being a 1 cost level 2, this has 1/2 stats, but as you attack the opponents, you get to gain additional 2 AP for the turn. This is one of the main units that you want to play out immediately first because it can take down the EX base alone with no problems. Now I know this is supposed to be a white base team and Earth Federation deck, but that's it for all the green Zaku units that we're running, as the rest of the entire deck profile is all going to be blue units from that specific archetype, which is going to be white base team and Earth Federation. Starting off with the 4 copies of GM, which is also a 1 cost level 2, just like the Zaku 2 as a 2/2 stat unit. Then I'm also running 4 copies of Gun Tank. When you deploy this card, you get to ping 1 damage on one of your opponent's rested units, and you ideally want to use this to take down any of the opponent's weakened units instead of necessarily using your own units to trade into them, because you want to focus your strategy into attacking the base and shields. Level 3s is where we begin to see more of our 2 cost units, with starting with 4 copies of Rizal, which is a basic vanilla with decent stats of 4 and 3, which is always great for trading into higher level bodies if we need to, or simply taking out an EX base alone. Similar concept, we try to attack with these units as much as possible. Next, I got 4 copies of Gun Cannon, which can repair itself with 1 health at the end of the turn, and when you pair with a pilot with it, you get to rest down one of your opponent's units with 2 HP or less. Ideally, you want to target the opponent's Zords because it's mainly a blocker unit that has 2 health. If not, you rest down anything that was weakened, especially try to focus on blockers as much as possible. But in addition, if you ever link it together with Amuro Ray, you get to rest down even more bodies on your opponent's side. Next, I'm playing 3 copies of G Fighter to give high maneuver to any one of our white base team trait units once it's deployed, so that it gives us another way to play around the opponent's pesky blockers, which stops us from attacking. And just like Gun Cannon, you can always link it together with a white base team trait pilot, which will mainly be Armor Array for this specific deck to go for a rush attack immediately the same turn it's played. Next, I also run 4 copies of Jagan, since this is a Earth Federation focused deck after all, so when we get those 2 bodies out, we can reduce its play cost by 1, making it even cheaper. That's it for level 3s. Now let's talk about level 4s as we continue to see more 2 cost drops for the deck, which I'm running 4 copies of Angsha, which does exactly the same thing as Gun Tank to ping 1 damage, as well as having a slightly stronger body as we play in the later levels. I'm also running 3 copies of the Vanilla Gundam from GD01, which is mainly intended to link together with Amuro Ray so that we can attack the same turn once it's deployed. And then for the main boss card of the deck, which is Gundam RX-78 from the starter deck, which you certainly want to run 4 copies of. Itself can repair damage at the end of the turn, and you want to make sure to be pairing it with a pilot at all times, ideally going to be linking together with Amuro Ray as well, so that it can give all of your units additional 1 AP during your turn, including itself. This card together with Amuro gives you a lot of versatility, as you get to rest down your opponent's units as well to play around blockers or trade into them, and then repair to keep yourself healthy. Otherwise, make sure that you can use it to attack into your opponent's bases with large health, especially if it has 6 HP. You guys can see that the ratio for units for this particular build is heavily skewed towards it, since you're trying to gas out as much as possible in the early stages. But now let's begin talking about our pilots, which you're playing the only pilot, 4 copies of Amuro Ray. Like I mentioned, you want to try to prioritize linking it together with anything that has a white base team trait when it comes to the link condition. Otherwise, save it for grandpa to go for those big combo plays. Always be mindful on how you can use Amuro Ray to pair it together with any of your units in order to rest the opponent's units with 5 HP or less, and that's mainly that you want to target the opponent's blockers from that. That's it for the pilot cards. Now let's talk about the command cards, which I'm running 2 copies of Fortress Defense. This simply deploys out 2 Zaku tokens with 1/1 stats in the later stages, so they have additional bodies to continue rushing down as much as you can. And then just as a one-off tech, I also play a Show with Resolve just to help us draw cards. Most decks you want to try to play additional copies of this card just because of how important it is and such a good staple, but because of the nature of this deck is to drop out low cost units, you actually don't find yourself opportunities to be playing this card as often, because you want to focus on swarming the board as much as possible, and every card they're going to be drawing from the top of your deck deck at the start of the turn will always likely be a unit card instead. That's why this is just a nice to have as a one-off to help you resupplement some cards into your hands if you ever need to in the later stages. But like I mentioned, you rarely have any chances to be playing a second copy of this card during the course of the game just because of how fast the game finishes with this specific deck. And then to wrap up for the rest of the deck profile with base cards, I'm only running the one copy of Underground Desert Base. That is just to give us a little bit of defense, but mainly just so that we can draw an additional card from the top of our shield so that we can hopefully see a unit so that we can play it out. Tech choices and other cards that you guys can also include. Another engine you can also play in this deck, aside from just relying on the RX-78, is Shenlong Gundam with Chang Wu-Fei as well. And this includes both the common and rare version of Shenlong Gundam from GD01. They both have breach, and when you link it together with Chang Wu-Fei, this is great to play around the opponent's blockers, because if they ever do try to block, you get to take down that unit and also still do damage to their shields. Otherwise, use it to battle against your opponent's suspended units to get rid of their board for a little bit of additional control. On top of that, the rare Shenlong Gundam can immediately destroy any level 3 or lower blockers as it attacks, which is great for getting rid of Zawarts and Lafrifs. If you feel like the one-off Desert Ground base isn't enough and you want to include additional base cards, you can play up to 1 or 2 Corsica bases, which is also intended to help you spawn out more tokens. First time you get to spawn out Tall Geese, and then if you have a existing Corsica base in the trash already, once you deploy the second one, you get to spawn out 2 Leo tokens with 1/1 stats instead. Overall, just another method to spawn out unit tokens on the board so that you can make additional attacks instead of just relying on resources from your hand. Combos and how to play the Earth Federation Aggro Rush deck. Let's begin talking about that you always want to try to go second in this current format with best of 1, just because you don't know what your opponents are playing, and mainly is so that you gain the EX resource. So that really depends on how the die roll goes, but let's just say not always you really get to choose. So assuming we are going first instead in this case, but you guys can see with the level 2 units, these are something that you want to drop down as soon as possible in your first turn if you were going second. If not, you're going to be dropping down in your second turn if you were going first. You're really just trying to play out these units for as cheap as possible, utilizing and optimizing your resources play every single turn, which really counts, so that you can flood the board and start aggroing out against your opponents. And ultimately, that's when you go into Gundam RX-78 whenever you need to go for link plays alongside with Armor Array. So let's just say you start at level 2 right away. This is where you want to use your resources and play out your 1-cost units. And establishing this Zaku 2 from the starter deck is really preferable because you want to take down the opponent's EX base, and simply just by attacking with it as it gains the 2 additional AP, your opponent either has to choose to block that attack or they get rid of that EX base right away with this card single-handedly alone. As you continue, you just keep attacking and attacking. There's nothing to think about. You really just want to keep going for their shield and rush them down and try to finish the game as quickly as possible, because the later the game goes, you start running out of steam and gas and you won't be able to win from there. In situations, if your opponent has units with 1 HP left, this is where you want to utilize your gun tanks, or if you have multiple of them, to snipe them down by paying that damage and getting rid of those pesky bodies to also slow down their win condition or take down any blockers that they may have blocked one of your attacks in the early stages too. Once you reach level 3, this is where you can start going for other plays by playing out your Rizal, or even additional 1-cost units, which you're gonna have a lot in your hand, and continue to go wide as much as possible. If your units gets destroyed, it's totally fine. You just wanna make sure you can continue playing more and more turn after turn. If you ever had 2 Earth Federation units to begin with already, this is also how you can just simply play out Jegan for a reduced cost of 1, making it 1 cost only as a level 3 for a 2/3 stat body on the board as well. Once you get into level 4, this is where you can start considering going into your armor roll plays. First and foremost, you could go ahead and play out a gun cannon, and with that you can use 1 resource to link Armor Array with it. Therefore, you get to rest down a 2 HP or less unit on the board alongside with a 5 HP or less as well, which ideally is going to be blockers as you continue to attack with gun cannon. If not, you can go for a little bit of value trades just because it has repair 1. Alternatively, this is where you go into the grandpa play instead by paying the 3 resources and then using the 1 with Armor Array to do exactly the same thing, either striking down a base that has 5 or 6 health immediately in one go, or you can go trade into the opponent's units so that even if you take damage at the end of the turn, you have repair 2, so you can still keep healthy with your RX-78 on the board. Ultimately, it's really important to save your Armor Array at the situations that you really need to rest down their blockers, and I really really want to heavily emphasize this because blockers are one of the easiest ways to slow down the game pace, and it ruins this game plan in order for you to get into your win conditions. Otherwise, other level 4 plays, you can go for Anxia to ping a damage, or go into and set up another Gundam RX-78. And if you ever need to in dire situations, or if you feel like you really can go for a value rush attack right there, this is where you would link it together with there. Otherwise, ideally, you want to go for the Gundam there instead, which is the LR1. Eventually, in the later stages of the game, aside from just trying to pair your armor array or linking it together to use as effect to rest units, you can always use G Fighter to use as deploy effect to give something high maneuver so it's unblockable for that turn, and you can use it to basically go for the lethal swing. If not, itself can also do the same thing, play it out to give it itself, and then you link armor array together, which is a white-based team trait, so that you can also use that to attack and finish the opponents off. So overall, a very straightforward based rushing strategy that you just want to attack, really all out aggression, zero defense, all gas, no breaks into the opponent's bases and shields, and that's exactly how you win with this deck. If you want to support me and the channel even further, make sure to grab the first assembly collection on the AVAULT store right now, which has all the essential TCG accessories that you need to get started. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are. See you next video, and this is AVAULT signing out.